Vulnerable Wetlands and Stormwater Management Planning. Part 6. 10 Stormwater Rules of Thumb that Protect and Restore Vulnerable Wetlands. The final segment in the Vulnerable Wetlands and Stormwater Management Planning series presents 10 rules of thumb to apply when deciding on strategies to address stormwater issues. In this presentation, we developed 2 map series for each subwatershed of interest. The base map for Type 1 series incorporates the Index of Ecological Integrity data layer, and the base map for Type 2 series includes the hydrologic soil groups. In previous segments, we discussed how to design 2 types of GIS maps for use as stormwater planning tools. To review, the base map for Type 1 includes the 2011 ortho photos with the Index of Ecological Integrity and stormwater outfall overlays. These maps identify intact wetland systems where planning efforts should focus on protection and preservation. When using these maps to protect resource, look for land areas with high IEI value that 1. Contain or are near vulnerable wetlands such as headwater streams or vernal pool clusters. 2. Contain or are near critical areas such as public water supplies or bathing beaches. 3. Are far removed from stormwater outfall and from land use types with high pollutant loading rates. And 4. Contain wetlands with intact, undisturbed vegetated buffer zones. The Type 1 maps also identify degraded wetland areas where efforts should focus on wetland restoration and mitigation of stormwater impacts. When using these maps to restore impaired waters, look for land areas with low IEI value for vulnerable wetlands that are in close proximity to stormwater outfall. 2. For vulnerable wetlands with limited or no surrounding vegetated buffer zone. Or 3. Vulnerable wetlands that are in close proximity to land use types that are known to have high pollutant loading rates in cases where TMDL requirements apply. It is important to note that although the maps depict wetland areas that are regulated under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, they also include wetland types or upland habitat areas that are not regulated under the Act, but are important to protect nonetheless. For example, vernal pool clusters may contain upland areas between vernal pools that are beyond wetland jurisdictional boundaries. The Type 2 base map is the same as Type 1, except that the Index of Ecological Integrity overlay is replaced by the hydrologic soil groups A and B. These maps can be used to identify locations at which to site the structural and low-impact development best management practices that most effectively treat stormwater. When using these maps, look for areas with hydrologic soil type A or B as defined by the U.S. Natural Resources Conservation Service, in which to set back stormwater outfalls or locate treatment BMPs. These soils generally are well drained and have a greater potential to provide recharge and infiltration. Consult the MassDEP Stormwater Handbook, Volume 2, Chapter 2 for selection of stormwater treatment options. And lastly, follow the 10 stormwater rules of thumb that we've developed to accompany these maps for planning purposes. The mantra that applies for all forms of stormwater planning is to disconnect from end-of-the-pipe stormwater management systems, distribute and treat stormwater at the source, and infiltrate stormwater on site. We've defined 10 rules of thumb as a guide for community planning that can also be used for project design and review. The first rule of thumb is to identify healthy, unfragmented wetlands in the landscape or on the lot that are suitable candidates for preservation. If the area is low IEI and the wetlands are found to be degraded, mark them as potential sites to be improved or restored. Second, preserve open spaces with high ecological integrity to maintain water quality in the wetlands and waterways for the future. The third rule of thumb is to adopt local policies, incentives, and regulations to direct new development to existing infrastructure and improve inadequate drainage systems in roads or water and sewer lines. Fourth, protect and restore vegetated buffers around wetlands, at least 100 feet if possible. Use low-impact development techniques that remove pollutants and reduce the volume of stormwater leaving a site. Infiltrate the remaining stormwater to replenish base flow in streams and minimize flooding and erosion. The goal is to keep water local, so when reconstructing drainage systems, disconnect and distribute, and when building new drainage and stormwater management systems, use low-impact designs that recharge and infiltrate on site to maintain the existing hydrology. Avoid treatment of stormwater in wetlands or creating new discharges to wetlands. Set stormwater treatment and infiltration systems as far back from the wetlands as possible. Avoid the 100-foot buffer zones for best pollutant removal, but adopt a 50-foot setback as a minimum design practice. Set back or treat existing discharges to wetlands, especially near public water supplies. Avoid direct stormwater discharges near vernal pools that can pollute the aquatic habitat and lengthen the pool's hydroperiod. Lastly, treat stormwater for pollutants of concern as identified by a TMDL with the prescribed treatment practices. Consider soil conditions when selecting a best management practice, and remember that not all discharges are created equal. Hydrologic soil groups A and B are best for infiltration, but in areas where soils have poor drainage characteristics, find alternate treatment BMPs. For additional information regarding vulnerable wetlands and using GIS maps for stormwater management planning, please contact Nancy Lynn or Alice Smith of the MassDEP Wetlands Program. Our email addresses are nancy.lynn@state.ma.us or alice.smith@state.ma.us. References and links for vulnerable wetlands presentations can be found on the MassDEP websites under Education and Outreach. Vulnerable Wetlands and Stormwater Management Planning presentation is funded in part by a Federal Clean Water Act Wetland Program Development Grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Region 1.